Good morning to all of our friends, family members, trustees, President Caputo, faculty, staff, and especially to our students. Welcome to our annual remembrance ceremony here at the Robert J. Miller Homeland Education Center. I'm Tom Ross, Associate Dean for Public Services here at College of DuPage, and it is my honor to be with you here this morning to mark the 22nd anniversary of 9/11. In a moment, we will hear from our College President, Dr. Caputo, and then Chief Volpe and Chief Lambert. At 7:46, which is 8:46 Eastern Time, we will join ceremonies taking place throughout the United States and pause for a moment of silence to mark the time American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the 95th floor of the North Tower of the World Trade Center, which of course began the tragic attack of that day. We're here to remember the first responders and all of the victims in New York, Washington, D.C., and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. That day, that is the focus. We also remember the families of all that are lost and of all the families who continue to suffer and the other deaths over the years, for the last 22 years, from cancer from working at Ground Zero. But first, we start off our ceremony with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask Suburban Law Enforcement Academy Class BA 2305 Drill and Ceremony Recruit Daniel Spivak from the Lombard Police Department to call the 79 recruits to attention and lead all of us in the pledge.
Class BA 2305, present! I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Class order!
Thank you. Now it is my honor to introduce our first speaker. He is a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point, a former military police officer during his time serving our great nation in the Army, and a staunch supporter of our police and fire public safety programs here at the Robert J. Miller Center. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Brian Caputo, President, College of DuPage.
Good morning, and I'd like to thank you all for being here this morning. I'd also like to recognize some of our board trustees that are here, Chair Christine Fenney, Vice Chair Heidi Holen, and Trustee Andrew Mano, who are here, and thank you for being here. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, millions of Americans began their day like any other. However, by 9 a.m. Eastern Time, reports of an airliner crashing into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan began to dominate every news outlet. A mere 16 minutes later, millions witnessed a second plane hitting the South Tower. It was the most devastating terrorist attack on civilians in our nation's history, one that would leave an indelible mark on our lives and our country. 22 years later, we gather to commemorate 9/11. We remember the lives that were lost and pay tribute to the service and sacrifice of our first responders, many of whom gave their lives to help others. We also reflect on how 9/11 shaped us as individuals and as a nation. People from all walks of life shared their grief and their determination while standing together as a country. This building, the college's Homeland Security Education Center, is a training ground for future first responders. Housed here, within it is an I-beam from the World Trade Center. It serves as a reminder of how our resolve was tested that fateful day. It is also a testament to the dedication of first responders. May we never forget the ultimate sacrifice by those who gave of themselves in the line of service.
Thank you, Dr. Caputo. Our next speaker served as a police officer for the city of Wheaton for 35 years, working his way up through the ranks and retiring as chief of police in 2018. He then came here to be the director of the Suburban Law Enforcement Academy, a post he's held for the last 5 years. Please join me in welcoming Chief Jim Volpe.
Thank you, sir. And thank you all for being here on this very somber event. I think back on that day, I was a sworn officer, a lieutenant with the Wheaton Police Department. And my first emotion was one of utter disbelief. How could anyone think to attack the United States? I didn't think it was real. It had to be an accident. And then it hit me. This was no accident. And then I started thinking as a first responder. And I thought of all the first responders who were there and what they were doing and what their protocols were and the utter chaos it must have been. And I couldn't imagine the responsibility that all the first responders had. And then I started thinking of my fellow brothers and sisters in law enforcement. And some of them weren't going to make it. And we were glued to the TV set watching that happen. Then we got angry. And that anger caused us to jump into action. And all the first responders everywhere, especially in my own department, we started getting our directives. Go to all the soft targets. Protect our city. And we will all protect our cities and make sure that our citizens are safe from another attack. And it was a 24/7, what we call a 12-hour shift, and there was no days off, and that was just the way we work. All the first responders jumped into action. And that position that we took that day brought us all together. And I remember all Americans coming together and putting all our differences beside ourselves. We put them all to the side. And we came together as a country. No color, no religion, no sexual orientation, nothing at all except we are Americans and we will stand tall. And I have felt that ever since, in law enforcement, first responders, and Americans. So that tragic event showed us that we can all come together and be one. And I'll never forget that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Our next speaker served as both a police officer and firefighter during his 33-year career in public safety. He worked his way up through the ranks of the North Aurora Fire Department, retiring as their fire chief, and then coming to join us here just a few months ago this summer as our program manager and director of our fire science program, which includes paramedics and the Fire Academy. In addition, he's a College of DuPage alumni. Please join me in welcoming Chief Ryan Lambert.
Thank you, Dean Ross, for inviting me to come up here and speak. Thank you for everybody that's here. Obviously, an emotional day on many levels from the onset. I sat down to try and write something out on this, and I kept catching myself just kind of coming from the heart on things. And that's where I've decided to take this a little bit more from my heart and not just a written thing. It just seems like it worked best for me. That tragic day in 9/11, I remember I was working for the Fermilab Fire Department at the time, and North Aurora, both. And for some reason, I just gotten off shift and went home. I turned on the TV, and there's a plane into the tower. And you sit there and you think, boy, I wonder what happened there. What a crazy event. In the idea of terrorism never even popped in my mind. The suicide, things like that, potentially, but nothing of a terrorist nature that came up. when the second plane went in, then I knew. It's like, okay, so this is seriously wrong. We're under attack. And you know, there's two things that come into a first responder's mind. One is, where can I help? And number two is, my family okay? So I rounded up my family. I took them over to my mom and dad's, my dad being a Batavia police officer for 32 years. And I knew that somebody was going to be calling for me to come in and work, whether it was police department, fire department, one of the two fire departments. And I was just waiting for the one to call, and it just so happened to be Fermilab. And I had the opportunity to make sure my family was okay, put them where they were going to be, the safest that I knew, and that was with my father and my mom at their house. But as you think back on those days, those first responders that went in, they didn't have time to think about their family. They didn't have time to think about themselves. They just acted. That's the gig. That's what they do. That's what you get your paycheck for. And when you take on a job like this, it's a calling more than it is a job. People that take it as a job they seem to wash out at some point. If you're not in there for the real reason, and that's helping people, it shows there's a difference, and a lot of the times those people get out. But as I digress, they went in there knowing the hazards and the potential that they were confronting. And as the two towers went down, we lost 343 firefighters, 70 police officers, and obviously thousands of human lives that were murdered. They were murdered. And for us to stand by and say, you know, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? As Americans, this is the very moment what we can do. We can remember these people, and we can't just make it a saying. It can't just be, oh yeah, we remember. Let me put I remember Facebook post up. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be truly you feel it, your heart, your thoughts. I can promise you, anybody that was of any age of remembrance will remember where they were at, what they were doing. Sometimes even a smell or a sight of something that'll bring you back to that place. And it's unfortunate that that's what's happened to this country. Much like Chief Volpe said, the positive side of this is this country really did pull together. And I was very proud of them, politics aside, all that, and we came together as Americans, and our heart bled and our heart felt for all those that were killed, the families that were that were destroyed by that. I saw a statistic: 3,506 kids they had their parents taken from a parent, at least, from there. So as I wrap this up, I just want us to keep remembering these folks. There's 422,000 people in the New York area that are suffering from PTSD from this event alone. So that's staggering. Those numbers are staggering. But just remember, and one of the most beautiful things I ever saw, it was the days past and all the American flags flying. And if everybody remembers, the flags were flying. And to me, the American flag is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life, I believe. And for those flags to be flying, boy, and unfortunately we've gotten away from that again. And we don't need another tragedy to bring us that. So hopefully, one by one, we can all kind of get back out there and show our support for the United States, both being a good person and also maybe getting out there and flying that flag again. Thank you for inviting me up here and being able to speak.
Thank you, Chief. Right now, while we're here, there are memorial services going on at Ground Zero in New York, the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. In churches, schools, airport lounges, town squares all over these United States. Firefighters are standing at attention in front of their stations. The fire trucks are pulled out of their garage with their lights on, and the firefighters are standing there in their turnout gear. In police stations, the day shift is starting, and roll call officers are lined up, and they're bowing their heads in tribute Over the radio, the dispatchers are broadcasting the last call. We take this time to remember all the victims from that day. We, of course, remember the sacrifices of all the first responders, but we're also awed by the courage shown by the passengers of Flight 93 that crashed in Pennsylvania, saving thousands of lives in Washington, D.C. by preventing the terrorists from reaching their target, which was believed to be the Capitol or the White House. We remember the victims killed and injured at the Pentagon, and for the survivors who continued working in that building as it burned, coordinating air cover from our fighter jets and mobilizing our military forces as our nation came under attack because we didn't know what was coming next. So with that, please join me in a moment of silence.
Class, ceremonial, parade, press!
Thank you.
Pass, ate, who? One man, one team!
As we leave here today, we remember the tragedy and overwhelming sadness. We honor the courage and sacrifices of so many on 9/11. We also remember that life goes on. We are so grateful and fortunate to live in a country that mourns, is resilient, and endures. I want to thank Dr. Caputo, Chief Volpe, and Chief Lambert for being here and speaking today, and I want to thank all of you, our College of DuPage community, for being with us here this morning. We truly appreciate it. This concludes our ceremony. We hope to see you back here again next year. Thank you very much.